Actually.
Yeah, we're live on YouTube, so it says.
Apparently we're live and it's gone.
Yeah.
Okay. I will start again then.
Excellent.
Good morning. I'm Councillor Peter Morrell. I'm chairing this meeting this morning of the Licensing Subcommittee, and we are to deal with the premises licence for the Townfields 109 Wellingborough Road, Findon. Amanda, would you like to present the case? You're on mute. That famous word.
Apologies, it's classic, isn't it?
Yes.
First of all, if I just start by running through the order of events. So I will first present the report, then I will pass it back over to the chair, and the order of events that we'll hear are from the applicant first of all, then from the responsible authorities, which this morning we have Matt O'Donnell from is representing licensing, and we have Catherine Clooney representing environmental protection, and then we have the interested parties, Mr. and Mrs. Wright. So thank you, Chairman. So I'll present the report. So this hearing is to consider an application for a premises licence for 109 Wellingborough Road, Findon. It's a 5-acre former cricket ground which is now being used as an event space, and this event space is available to hire for a wide range of different events, and the application will permit licensable activities to take place at these events. So the application form details the full requested hours for each of the licensable activities, and notably includes a terminal hour of 1:30 AM at weekends for the provision of music and the retail sale of alcohol, along with other licensable activities, and with a closing time of 2 AM, with earlier hours during midweek. There are no suggested limits in the application as to the frequency and number of events to be permitted. And the applicant's agent has forwarded to me some screenshots from the Towerfield Events website and asked that these be sent along to members. Members have now received these, so they've been sent along. During consultation, representations were received from 2 responsible authorities, the Environmental Protection Team and the Licensing Team, and also from 2 interested parties. And Mr. and Mrs. Ryder here today, and also we had a representation from Findon Parish Council who aren't here today. The Health Protection Team leader was responding on behalf of the licensing team and noted that the type, size and impact of the events could vary significantly, and as such suggested that conditions are added to any license granted to require event management plans and engagement with the Safety Advisory Group. Mr. O'Donnell is here this morning, so he'll be able to provide further details. The Environmental Protection Team leader detailed concerns over the potential for the wide-ranging events to cause a nuisance to neighbouring properties from noise, light or antisocial behaviour. And again, Mrs. Clooney is also here this morning, so we'll be able to provide further details on this. Interested parties have raised concerns over the operating hours requested within the application and have concerns that this could cause a disturbance to local residents from potential noise, unruly behaviour or litter left behind from events. And as I say, Mr. and Mrs. Ryder are here this morning, so again, we'll be able to provide further details of their concerns. Officers from the Environmental Protection Team have engaged with the agent to discuss their concerns, and as a result of these discussions, the applicant has offered to add additional conditions to the licence, and these are detailed within paragraph 5.3 of the report. And these could be added to the licence as conditions if members are minded to approve the application. When making the decision on whether to grant the licence, members will need to have regard to the information provided by the applicant, and information provided by those who submitted representations, and also the Council's statement of licensing policy. Any decision that the subcommittee makes must be made with a view to promoting one or more of the 4 licensing objectives and not for any other reason. And to clarify, these licensing objectives are the prevention of crime and disorder, public safety, the prevention of public nuisance, and the protection of children from harm. Thank you, and I'll now pass back to Councillor Morrell.
Okay, well, if the applicant would like to make his case now, please.
Yes, certainly. Chair, can I just check that everyone can hear me?
Yes, thank you.
Thank you very much, Chair.
Chair, my name's Frank Fender. I'm the agent representing the applicant today. The applicant is Mr. Paul Robinson, who's also on your screen. And the proposed designated premises supervisor for the premises is Mr. Chiro Chiampi, who is also present here this morning at this meeting. If I can just explain the reason why I sent those screenshots from the website for Tower Fields, it was basically to give you a better understanding or enable you to see the nature and the style of events that are intended to take place at these premises. The pictures serve greatly rather than a verbal explanation. The application this morning is by Paul Robinson for a new premises licence for Tower Fields, located at 109 Wellingborough Road, Findon. As you've heard, Tower Fields is a 5-acre former cricket ground which is located on the outskirts of Findon. Within the premises, within the grounds, there is a small clubhouse building, and there is also a separate building which used to accommodate the changing rooms when the premises was used as a sports ground. The 5 acres of event space is mainly open grassland. Now, Mr. Robinson actually resides within the grounds. He is the owner of Tower Field and he has lived here for over 40 years. He's extremely familiar with the area. He's extremely familiar with local people. He's well respected and he manages these premises very, very well. The clubhouse has previously been licensed to sell alcohol up until midnight. That license lapsed, it's believed, about 7 years ago. It no longer has a license. Tower Fields does have a website and it is available to be hired by groups and organisations. In fact, people have been able to hire these premises for their events for the past 3 years. Now, I'd like you to imagine the following scenarios. Somebody rings Mr. Robinson and they say, I'm the chairperson of the local school parents association, and we would like to hire your premises for a charity function. Or it could be, I am the secretary of a vintage motorcycle group. We would like to hire your event space for a display show. My parents are celebrating their golden wedding anniversary, and we would like to hire your event space for friends and family to celebrate. It could be I'm involved in a camping group. We would like to have our annual general meeting at your event space where we would like to stay over the weekend. A film company have been in touch. We wish to hold an outdoor cinema event in your event space in the form of a drive-in movie night. These are the types of events which it is intended will be held at these premises. Some of those events will include licensable activities. Not all of them, but some of them. And in the past, if licensable activity has been requested, then that has been authorised through the submission of a temporary event notice. Temporary event notices have been issued at these premises in the days before the COVID pandemic for events which have included a car show, a wedding, a wake, and a family party. The licensable activities authorised by those temporary event notices have included the sale of alcohol and regulated entertainment. All events took place, no complaints were received, all events managed successfully by Mr. Robinson. Mr. Robinson wants to increase the usage of his event space by people who want to hold their events at this location. This is actually advertised on his website. Can I stress, he is not interested in his premises being used in the style of a nightclub. He is not interested in hiring out for a rave style activity, which younger people seem to enjoy. He is only looking to attract recognised clubs, recognised organisations, recognised groups and family events. The website actually states that people can hold their weddings, parties, club meets, car shows, etc. at these premises. Event organisers enter into a contract with Mr. Robinson, a legal contract with proper terms and conditions. And by doing this, Mr. Robinson is easily able to identify bona fide organisations and family celebrations as a result of this process. It's his safety net to ensure that any event is respectful and genuine. Where events involve a licensable activity, you heard me say that currently a temporary event notice is required. But you will be aware that the use of temporary event notices are restricted. They are restricted to a certain number of notices each calendar year. The premises are restricted to only being allowed to use for 21 days each calendar year under a temporary event notice. It is restrictive, hence the application before you today, which would widen the use for these premises. If you are minded to grant this application today, it would permit licensable activity in the form of the sale of alcohol, regulated entertainment, and late night refreshment. Now, the initial application for these activities to take place was up until midnight from Sunday to Thursday and until 1:30 a.m. on a Friday and a Saturday. We appreciate that the application states that the activities are to take place every day of the year, but the reality is that simply would not happen. In fact, the premises would only be used under the premises license if there is an event booked by an organisation, a club, family, or similar. I mentioned earlier that a client of Mr. Robinson enters into a written agreement with Mr. Robinson. The client is then responsible for setting up the event. The client is responsible for leaving the event site as they found it. If licensable activity forms part of the event, then Mr. Robinson will ensure that all aspects of the premises license are complied with for the duration of that event. The intended use of these premises in this way means that events would probably only take place at weekends. It could be expected that the warmer months would be used more than the colder months. So the number of events in the colder months would undoubtedly be fewer. However, by requesting a premises license to permit licensable activity for each day of the year, it enables Mr. Robinson the flexibility to be able to operate when there is a booking, a flexibility to hold an event during the week or at the weekend. If there is no previously booked event, there will be no one using that space. If I can turn to the representations, there are 4. One from the team leader of environmental protection, one from the team leader of health protection, one from Findon Parish Council, and one from the residents of 103 Wellingborough Road. No other representations. Notably, no representation from the police. Now, I emphasise this as the police are held to be experts in their respective field, in respect of crime and disorder, in respect of antisocial behaviour, and yet they make no representation to this application. They are clearly happy with the proposed times and the proposed licensable activities. And I can say that because I personally had a conversation with the police licensing officer in respect of this application. He told me the police had no concerns. The representation from the resident of 103 Wellingborough Road is not actually objecting to the licence being granted, but does propose different times to those on the application form. The representation from Findon Parish Council is concerned with the potential for disturbance from outdoor music until 1:30 a.m. That forms part of the application. The representation from the team leader for health protection does not propose any alternative times for the proposed activities, but instead proposes the adding of 2 conditions relating to the submission of an event management plan and notification of events. I'll come back to that shortly. The representation from the team leader for environmental protection proposes 34 additional conditions, which include amended times for licensable activities. You will have read the representation. I do not propose to go through every one of those proposed conditions, but I would like to remind you and draw your attention to paragraph 10, subparagraph 10 of the statutory guidance issued under section 182 of the Licensing Act. And that paragraph states, the 2003 Act requires that licensing conditions should be tailored to the size, type, location, and characteristics and activities taking place at the location concerned. Conditions should be determined on a case-by-case basis, and standardised conditions which ignore these individual aspects should be avoided. Now, I have to bring that to your attention, as many of the conditions proposed within the representation appear to be standardised conditions and do not appear to be taking into account the size, the type, the location and characteristics as directed by the statutory guidance. For example, there is a proposed condition within this representation regarding fireworks and pyrotechnics. No such fireworks or pyrotechnics are mentioned in the application. There is a proposed condition regarding any external designated smoking area not causing a disturbance. The premises are a 5-acre open grassland field, safe for a small clubhouse building. Smoking would take place outdoors anywhere within that 5 acres. There are conditions appertaining to noise and vibration from extractor systems. There are none. The team leader also proposes that the hours for regulated entertainment and the sale of alcohol should be amended. Should be amended to regulated entertainment from 9 in the morning until 8 o'clock at night, and the sale of alcohol to be amended to read from 9 o'clock in the morning to 10 o'clock at night. She then speaks of a restriction on the availability of food. Restricting the licensable activities to those times would mean that the business simply could not get off the ground. For example, who wants to go to a wedding? Who wants to go to a family celebration, a charity fundraiser, where the music has to stop at 8 o'clock, where the sale of alcohol has to stop at 10 o'clock? Who wants to go to a drive-in movie night where the film has to finish at 8 o'clock in the evening? Drive-in movies are often held during the summer months. They need the dusk, they need the darkness to be able to screen. 8 o'clock, it simply would not work. So these proposed times, as mentioned in the representation, would not enable Mr. Robinson to run the premises in the way that he would like. It is, of course, open to you to decide which conditions should be attached to the premises licence if you are minded to grant it. But now that you have heard how the premises is intended to be used and operate, we would hope that any conditions will reflect the nature and style of the premises and the proposed events. During the consultation, you've heard from your officer that we did have discussions with environmental protection. And during those discussions, we agreed to amend the times for the licensable activities ourselves. It was agreed that they would be reduced. It was agreed that the terminal hour for regulated entertainment at the premises would be amended to 2,300 hours on any given day. I would like to stress that the intention of that, Chair, is for music regulated entertainment, for music entertainment to finish at 11 o'clock at night, rather than the midnight proposed on the application form, rather than the 1:30 a.m. for Friday and Saturday proposed on the application form. We further propose that the terminal hour for the sale of alcohol would be amended to midnight on any given day. Midnight, not the 1:30 on a Friday or a Saturday. It was further agreed that the maximum number of persons permitted to be on the site when licensable activity takes place would be 1,000. That would exclude staff, exclude performers, exclude exhibitors. It was further agreed that a contact telephone number would be provided to nearby residents, which they could call if they have any complaints or issues regarding the activities at Tower Field. It was further agreed that notices would be affixed to the exits of the premises, asking people to leave quietly. And it was further agreed that the licence holder would notify the licensing authority and the police of any events taking place at the premises at least 14 days before they took place. When we received the representations, we went through them with the applicant, the DPS and myself. Mr. Robinson is happy to agree a further measure which restricts the number of times each calendar year when regulated music entertainment is permitted to take place. He has taken into account the content of the representations. He would agree to a maximum of 15 events per calendar year where regulated music entertainment takes place. In respect of the event management plan, which was mentioned in another of the representations, given the nature of the events which will be taking place at these premises, we actually believe that to provide an event management plan for each would be disproportionate to what is actually taking place. For example, is an event management plan necessary for a golden wedding family celebration? Is an event management plan necessary where 40 caravans and motorhomes pitch up for a weekend meet? It's certainly my experience that event management plans are usually reserved for large-scale events, which will impact severely on the local area, whereby thousands of people swarm to a location to be entertained by well-known singers and groups. What is being proposed at these premises are events which are totally different to those style of events. Having said that, rather than propose an event management plan be submitted for every single event, it may be more proportionate to condition the submission of an event management plan for any event where more than 500 people are expected to attend. You've heard there'll be a limit of 1,000. If there's over 500, then an event management plan can be submitted to the licensing authority and to the police. And in fact, Mr. Robinson is happy to add that into his terms and conditions, the legal contract which he enters into when a client hires this event space. Chair, that is the application, but before I finish, I would like to ask Mr. Robinson if he would like to address you personally. Paul?
Hello, is that working?
Yes, Paul.
Right, sorry, I've never done this before. I'm new to this.
You're doing well.
Yeah, a bit of a panic. Yeah, I think Frank's covered everything pretty accurately there. The thing is, I've been up here quite a long time now. It's been closed for quite a while, and quite a few of the local people that used to attend and come to odd little events that my dad used to run, and previous sort of people who've leased the premises, you know, I keep getting asked about when we're going to do something. Oh, we miss it up there. So I think I've got a bit of local backing and a bit of support. It would be nice to get something happening again. You know, I've got a 5-acre space with nothing going on. It seems a terrible waste. And yeah, so as Frank said, I'm really, really paranoid about anybody trying to set up illegal raves or anything. That's why I'm changing to bona fide event management companies or larger organisations or clubs. You know, I've turned just recently, last month or so, I've turned probably 10 or 12 people away that want to book events that I weren't happy with, but yeah, one of them was like a school prom. They wanted the music to go on much too late, and I'm not having that because I live here. I know it had upset the neighbours, so it was just an outright no. So I understand the concerns and the concerns of neighbours. I've got the same concerns myself because I live on site. Yeah, I suppose that's about it, really. I'm not sure what else to add. But yeah, it's not just going to get out of hand and be silly and big parties every weekend, because I want to promote things like, you know, like food markets and stuff like that, where it's open to the public and it's purely a daytime event as well. You know, just a good mixture of things, not just a one, you know, that's the place that always has a car show or always has music at weekends or something. I want a variety of things.
Thank you, Mr. Robinson.
Sorry.
Okay, thanks.
So therefore, Chair, if I can just summarise, this is an application to use a 5-acre field with a clubhouse facility for licensable activities. In practice, it will only be used at weekends, but there would be some occasional midweek use too. Not all events taking place at the premises would include licensable activity, but the option would be there if it was required. Being located on the outskirts of Findon reduces the potential for noise nuisance. In fact, there's only one representation from a resident of Findon, no others. The application is amended now from the original submission to reflect the concerns expressed in the representations. Further measures have been proposed as a result of discussion and reading through the representations. These are the actions of an applicant who wants to increase the use of his property, but only in a way that does not impact on others. and I would ask you to grant the application.
Thank you. I see we have Councillor Harrington's hand up. Is it a question of clarification? Unmute yourself, please.
Yes, it is, Chairman, actually. What I wanted to ask, actually, is that you did say that it was licensed for alcohol and that license lapsed 7 years ago. Could I just ask why Mr. Robinson allowed that to lapse 7 years ago? I could understand if it was just a year ago while we had lockdown, but that seems a long while ago that you went without an alcohol license. Why was that?
Paul, can you take that question, please?
Yes. Hello. Yeah, what it was, originally when we bought the place, or my father bought the place, he ran it. Then after his death, we leased it out to 2 or 3 different people over a number of years. And the last lady who leased it from us, she retired due to ill health and the fate that most pubs seem to suffer at the moment, you know, just lack of custom. And so basically it just closed down through that. It just wasn't being used, or it's not viable. It's not financially viable as a 7 days a week licensed premises. And then after she retired, we just left it for a period of time because I was busy doing other things. But as I've been asked so many times about or approached by people about renting it and doing things, I thought, well, there's probably some mileage in it. And that's where I'd like to pick up again now, but run it basically as a late spring, summer, early autumn events at weekends.
Right.
Sort of place. I mean,
if I could just clarify, Paul, so for the last 6-7 years, you have still rented out the site, but as an unlicensed events only, unlicensed alcohol events only.
Yes, there have been a few smaller ones. I'm just trying to think now. Yeah, there's been a few sort of odd little family gatherings, a few little bits and pieces, but mostly if there's anything, like there was a party for a friend who's in hospital, sadly then his wake, there was a wedding and everything, all of those have had the temporary event notice. But it's only, I thought, well, you know, people are starting to get interested. Maybe I can do something with this. So I'd like to pick it up, build up the infrastructure. And also, you know, I cut 5 acres of grass every week. Well, it seems a little bit of a waste.
Sure. Okay, thank you.
Andrew.
Thank you. Thank you, Chairman. Yeah, I'd like some clarification, if I may, around the temporary event notices. In seeking those notices, what hours were we looking at for the temporary event notices?
Paul, could you explain the hours that you were granted on those temporary event notices, please?
Hello. Yeah. I think because it was the people that hired it from me, I got them to apply in their name because it was their event and they had to get their own insurance, etc. But I think it would have been pretty much the same as what we're looking at now. Music till around 11, you know, alcohol sales till about 12. But they brought in their own outside bars.
Right. So in essence, this was done by the hirers, not by yourself. Yes. Okay.
Yeah, it would be done by them because they're hiring the place. It's their, you know, they signed the contract. They have to get the insurance. They're responsible.
But you think they're kind of similar to the sort of things we're talking about today?
Yes, that's it. Yeah, exactly that. Just carry on as is or as was.
Okay, more or less. Yeah. Okay, that's fine. And are you aware at all of any problems with any of those events?
No, not really. It's I think everything went quite nicely and no trouble, no problems. Everybody wandered home and all seemed good.
Oh, sorry. And that leads me onto a last one. I think I've got a fairly good picture of the site. And I noticed there's nothing in the papers that I can see from the Highways Authority. Getting in and out, how does that work out onto the A6?
We've on our premises, we've got a gate. It's 24 feet wide, I think, with both gates wide open. And also from Wellingborough, so where they have to cross over, there is actually a central reservation for cars to pull into safely. They indicate and then turn into the gateway. But with car shows or anything like that, we've done a few bits of. We do actually have marshals standing on the gate to keep an eye on it, obviously for safety.
And again, you're not aware of any difficulties with that by the sound of it?
No, I think everything went fine. We have a couple of people standing up there at least, keeping an eye on the traffic, directing people out if there's something coming. It's controlled pretty tightly.
Okay, thank you very much.
Sorry, can I just add to that? Can you hear me?
Yes.
Sorry, just add to that. So when there is a high volume of traffic leaving the site, what we've done in the past is ask everybody to go left because it's an easier joining to the highways rather than go across the traffic to the right. So we have that in our event plan for any car event or when there's an egress of numbers at the same time that everybody turns left.
So you go down to Earthling, around the roundabout and back if
they need to, yeah.
Yeah, well, what they do once they get down to Earthling, you can't tell, of course, but the obvious thing is to go to the roundabout and come back. Yeah. Okay, I understand. Thank you. That's very clear.
Right. Do we have any further questions or clarification? If not, we'll go to the proper officers to give their points of view and notice. Who would like to go first?
Councillor Morell, I think Mr. and Mrs. Ryde have got their hand up.
Oh, sorry. Yes, it's a matter of clarification, is it?
It's okay. It's nice to see that it's been amended to be live music till 11 o'clock at night instead of 1:30 in the morning. But obviously it's still the alcohol's still till midnight, so there will still be. Okay, they're putting notices up to say to keep the noise down, but once people have had a few drinks or two, people tend to raise their voices and are not so adhere to the rules, shall we say. So finishing serving alcohol at midnight, you don't finish your drinks and leave at midnight. You'll be drinking till possibly 1 o'clock in the morning, then leaving in possibly a rowdy way. And obviously these events are in the summer months when windows are open, ventilating the property to keep things cool. So there still be noise created from this issue. I say we haven't got a problem with events being held there. It's just the lateness of the hours. I say also, I know they're talking about only 15 events per year, which are mainly at the weekends, which is the time where you are enjoying your time in the garden, socialising yourself. There is give and take because, yes, events have been held there before because the car rallies. And when they were held, you couldn't sit in the garden pleasantly chatting because of the music and the speakers going off. I say, yes, we understand that there was a club there and there was a club there when we first moved there. But when it was a club, it was just in the evenings a social event. But to change it to holding live events and things till midnight and beyond, there is that tendency to noise and also litter. Because, yes, when events have been held there before, people do tend to drop things as they leave, shall we say, and not always take their litter home with them. So yeah, we haven't got a problem with events being held there. It's just the lateness of the hours. And that's, sorry, I know reiterating some of the things I said, but it was just nice that the music's going to stop at 11. But my still concern is serving alcohol till midnight.
Yes, Mr. Wright, you will have a chance to give your full story a little bit later on. So I'll come back to you on that point. Okay, if there's no more matters of clarification. Thank you very much. Right, can we then move on to proper officers?
Thank you, Chairman. I'll come in here if that's okay. It's Matt
Thank you,
O'Donnell,
Matt.
Team Leader Health Protection. Just to pick up on, I've got a few questions if that's okay, but initially just to pick up on a few points that have been raised. Obviously, there was emphasis made on the nature of events and great play on the website information as well as to what events have taken place in the past. I'm sure it doesn't take me to tell anybody that despite all the best intentions, things can change at any point in future, just because things have been done a certain way in the past. Once a license is granted, potentially things could change. It may be the case that there is no genuine intention to do that, but really just wanted to stress that point. There was also significant emphasis placed on police representations. I would draw the members' attention to the fact that police can only submit representations on crime and disorder matters. The police would not submit anything on the other licensing objectives. And I had this conversation with the licensing officer myself as well at the police. So whilst they haven't submitted any representations, that's simply on the grounds of crime and disorder. The event management plan, I know Mr. Fender's comment about it, event management plans generally only being for large scale events. That's not the case at all. Obviously a proportionate event management plan is appropriate for all events, because by the very nature, it covers all the event management risks, whether it's 50 people in the middle of a field or 5,000 people. Obviously, it needs to be proportionate to the size and the scale and the risks involved. But I know there's mention of, say, 40 caravans. Now, I know for a fact the fire officer would be very interested in the fire safety perspective of having 40 caravans on a site with barbecues, with gas appliances, get plenty of gas bottles around, things like that. So I think we need to get away from the idea that event management plans are just for big events. That's not the case. And with other events, even small numbers, if there's vehicle movements on site, car events, things like that, traffic management plans on site, vehicle pedestrian interactions, obviously all need to be properly controlled through event management plans, risk assessments. So and other risks as well. Now, lost children, there are all sorts of other issues that can be considered in event management plans, and they're not limited to just large events. As I say, they've got to be proportionate to the size and scale of the event in accordance with risk assessment. Now, I'm not saying I would expect a weighty tone for every single event, but they are relevant to all events. Just a couple of questions, if that's okay. Can I ask the applicant, or well, it probably would be most appropriate for the applicant, how far in advance are events generally booked? Might be Mr. Robinson, I guess, would be able to answer that.
Yes, Paul, could you take that, please?
Hello, is that working?
Yes.
Yep. Sorry. Yeah, I just clicked it, didn't seem to work. I've actually had some people asking for sort of 2022 already, but normally from an events company, I would expect 3 or 4 months minimum. Very often get called up during winter to book stuff during the summer because they have to plan such a long way in advance. I would expect a couple of months minimum, really. And even that would be a bit of a rush because it normally takes them that long to book everybody else because they, other people have bookings to deal with. So yeah, it's normally a much longer term thing. It's not just sort of 2 weeks.
No, and that's exactly my point. I know you've offered up an event management plan, I think would be provided, or in informal discussions, event management plan for events over 500 currently, I think you're suggesting, would be offered up. Is it 2 weeks in advance of the event?
Yeah, I think there was a 2 week notification of, let the police know, etc., and file the plan at that point, just to let people know what's going on. Yeah,
I was just wondering why, when events, in your own words, are booked up usually many months in advance, why an event management plan or notification would be quite so late in the day, 2 weeks before the events.
I'm not quite sure where the 2 weeks came from. I thought that was just like a standard. If you've got something going on at your premises, you let the police know, etc. 2 weeks before, just so they've got it on record. There will be a thing happening at this place.
Can I just come in and qualify something on behalf of Paul, please, Chair, through you? I think organised groups, club societies may well be inclined to give that sort of notice, and I agree, they do. Paul, what's your experience of somebody if they want a party, if they want a family celebration or a wake? I mean, obviously, we would like to think we couldn't give that sort of notice for a wake. That would be vastly reduced from the proposed, I think, 56 days in Mr. O'Donnell's representation. What's your experience of what sort of length of time booking? What sort of notice do they give?
Yeah, obviously a wake, you never can tell, but smaller family things and everything, it might be a month or 2 before, but then generally if it's a smaller family thing, it might only be 50 people, all known to each other, which would be a smaller thing because they just want to set up maybe a few of their own tents or something, have their own background music, just as a family get together where they can all meet at a central point in the country, say, and then just have a kind of a party because it's a bigger back garden than theirs. That sort of level. That would be the short notice ones, I would have thought.
Thank you, Paul.
Okay, and just another question from me. I know there was mention of limiting it to 15 events a year. Is that right?
15 events where regulated music entertainment would take place.
That's what I wanted to clarify.
The reason for the qualification of music events, a drive-in cinema, quite often that won't finish until about 11:30. So to put the restriction of 11 o'clock on that would scupper the movie, so to speak.
Yeah.
So the proposal, and this was picked up in the representation of Ms. Clooney, I believe it is, saying, is there a restriction on the number of times an event would take place? So we're saying music entertainment, a maximum of 15 events per calendar year.
Okay. Thank you. Well, obviously, I mean, there will be some events there that won't require a license at all.
Absolutely. No, if there's no licensable activity, then there's no license to comply with, as you would know.
No. Okay. Thank you. I don't know whether anybody's got any questions from me, but I haven't got anything further to add or to ask. Thank you, Chairman.
Sorry, Councillor Peter. Sorry, can I just respond?
Yes, certainly.
As well, just to add with regards to some of the events. So, for instance, I am planning a series of car events within the regulations, within the licensing objectives. My event plan is already in place from last year. It will be updated accordingly for both COVID risk assessments and traffic management. So again, that would be in place well before any of the events taking place, and Paul would have that on file. And again, going back to some of the events which may be regular for clubs, once they've submitted their event plan, then obviously Paul would have that in advance. But with things like wakes, from my other experience in hospitality, it could be they're booking now for 2 weeks' time.
Of course.
So I know that Paul's extremely responsible, and it is his home, as it were. So he's an interested party to more than most. But yeah, the event plans and everything, and the traffic management onto and off-site are already in place for most of the events.
Right, thank you. Okay, is there other proper officers who wish to make some comments?
Hi, Sir Catherine Clooney, Team Leader for Environmental Protection. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can, thank you.
Yeah, I'm sorry about the video. I'm having some IT issues, but as long as you can hear me, that's the main thing.
We would like to see you, but we're quite happy to hear you.
Okay, that's fine. As long as you can hear me, that's the main. As obviously you've already got our formal representation, which was made on the grounds of prevention of public nuisance. I mean, obviously our original concern was the times, which were 10 a.m. through to midnight, 7 days a week, and 1:30 a.m. on Fridays and Saturdays. We had concerns about the application being very wide-ranging in its scope. Obviously, they've outlined the types of events that could arise. Our main concern obviously is the event site is bordered by noise sensitive residential development, and there's no barriers to prevent the transmission of noise. Even to kind of further afield, in our experience of noise nuisance, dependent on the noise, it could reach further due to the layout of the land around there. Quite a lot of the events are going to be open to the air or within a marquee, which marquees don't provide any mitigation for sound transference at all. Obviously, we're looking at the times of the day as well in terms of these events, and looking at obviously nighttime noise, but noise can be a problem to residents, has already been alluded in this conversation, any time of the day. You know, people do want to use their gardens in the warm weather. You know, it's not just restricted to nighttime. That is obviously our concern as well. Obviously, the license is being restricted, a capability of 7 days a week, and it's not going to be used that frequently. There is still the capability there. So the types of noise that we're kind of concerned about, it's not just music, it's shouting, screaming, particularly if people, you know, have had alcohol, voices do get raised, noise can travel. The noise from the, obviously the cinema, as well as the music, the engines, door slamming, there's all sorts of noise that could arise from these kind of events. One thing that hasn't been looked at is light nuisance. I don't know what kind of lighting is proposed for any of these events at all. We also look at antisocial behaviour. I know that has kind of been raised, and we do address that within my team. So again, we are concerned about people leaving the site, also shouting and screaming on the site, littering. Smoking, it was mentioned, obviously, in terms of conditions and smoking, that people can smoke anywhere on the site if there's not going to be a designated smoking shelter. That could impact on neighbouring residents if people are choosing to do that close to property boundaries. The provision of a number of people, the size of the potential events, obviously, was one of our concerns. Obviously, there has been temporary event applications, but obviously the size of the events that were proposed were a much greater scale, which could have a bigger impact than what has previously gone before. The application outlines that noise events would be controlled by regular noise patrols to monitor the level of music to ensure it's not causing a nuisance to nearby premises, and keeping records for inspection by the police as licensing officers. There's no kind of greater detail. We have talked about event management plans. We do consider that they're quite important. There was no indication as to levels of noise that could be appropriate. And we kind of think checking and doing patrols is kind of a reactive measure. The problem has already occurred. So there's already been a problem to residents. It's not controlling it. It's a reactive proposal. Okay. One of the things mentioned in order to control public nuisance from dispersed from the site was to display details of late night transport options. Kind of the arrival of vehicles and persons waiting for vehicles outside could create static noise within an area as well, so that hasn't kind of been mentioned currently. We looked at kind of the highways and how vehicles are leaving the site. There was a proposal to have late night transport options as well outside, so we need to maybe look at that from a traffic management point of view. Okay, I mean, let's have a look. We did put loads of standardised conditions on there. Obviously, these are conditions which I agree should be tailored to the site. Obviously, we hadn't had any dialogue with the applicants at that stage. I understand went to the authorities like the police, but there's been no dialogue with people like ourselves at the local authority. Some of the conditions that are standardised, which were mentioned about pyrotechnics and fireworks, obviously, we're not aware whether that could happen, and obviously the wide ranging proposals with weddings and parties, there could be fireworks. We want to ensure those as possible. In terms of external extraction systems, we've got no details to see whether they're on site. They might be. Obviously, we don't know that, so those why those kind of things have been included. So obviously the standardised conditions, yes, they do need to be tailored, but these are the issues that we thought needed to be mentioned. As we've said, we have had dialogue, which we approached the applicants ourselves to have some conversations in terms of the concerns that we've raised. Obviously, there has been a proposal to amend the operating schedule to limit regulated entertainment until 2300 hours on any day. and to limit the number of people on the site to no more than 1,000. However, we still think there are many other contributory considerations, and we don't think there's still a recognisable plan to convincingly demonstrate the premise will be managed to prevent a public nuisance. So the main areas of concern for us is that the premises location is such that it may be very difficult to prevent a public nuisance from our point of view in terms of our experience with that noise nuisance. So there is a residential property on Wellingborough Road, which immediately adjoins the premises boundary and is within a few metres of the clubhouse. Indeed, there is a building included within the western corner of the proposed premises boundary that appears to be a residential annex to 127 Wellingborough Road. So we wanted the status of that building clarified and the premise boundary amended if necessary. The edge of the main residential area finding is only 130 metres to the northwest of the proposed premises boundary, so a significant number of houses that could be subjected to nuisance, particularly entertainment noise and antisocial behaviour if the premises are not well managed. So even though we've got representation from very few, there are a number of properties. It's understood that the applicant requires to have flexibility to use the proposed premises in a number of different ways for a wide range of event types. However, a properly thought out management plan should be able to define how licensable activities can be reasonably accommodated on the site whilst providing the necessary protection to the public. So it may be useful to provide a number of management scenarios for different types of events that are envisaged. We also kind of question whether limiting the size of the licensable area might make management of events simpler. So these are questions that haven't yet been answered to us. We did attach a template and event management plan that kind of identifies matters that should be included, although we do recognise that some might not be relevant, but we thought that might be a useful thing to provide. It has been pointed out to us that not all of the types of events proposed are licensable. There are other controls in place that might have an impact on them, e.g. the markets charter, street trading, etc. Okay, so obviously the applicant has proposed to limit the number of attendees to 1,000 for any event. What we wanted clarification on this was, will that include organised performers, exhibitors? And I understand that that will not include those, so it will be 1,000 plus other people. How will the numbers be monitored? So some events could attract unpredictable numbers. How will they monitor capacity and turn people away? That's something we wanted answering. We were informed that the applicant would agree to a condition being added to the premises licence where they must notify the licensing authority and police of events at least 14 days before, which has been mentioned. Any such notification would need to be given in the early stages of event planning, at least 28 days, we feel, in advance of the event to enable consultation to take place and the necessary changes. So we don't really think the 14 days would be sufficient for us to kind of turn around and make some comments. Obviously, we will have lots of the work streams, etc. So we don't think 14 days would really be sufficient. Obviously, there has been some agreement that to reduce the terminal hour for regular entertainment on the application to terminate at 2,300 hours on any given day. So 2,300 hours would in principle be acceptable for us, but acceptability is also dependent on other factors. So the level, volume and characteristic of the noise, the number of frequency events, the duration of events, type of events, the use of generators and ancillary equipment, and the use of pyrotechnics and fireworks, which could still occur from the type of events that have been mentioned. It has been mentioned about restricting the number of events, regulated music entertainment, but this won't include cinema events, which can in itself create a large volume of noise from these events. It's not just regulated entertainment, music entertainment that needs to be looked at. The applicant will make a telephone number available, which has been outlined again in this, which people can call and report any concerns. And those concerns, I understand, would be entered in an incident record, which is also proposed. We have found in certain situations that we have dealt with that in many similar situations, residents do report to us that such phones are not answered, not cleared, no feedback is given, and no one takes proper responsibility for dealing with complaints. The management plan should detail who is responsible, what actions can be taken, especially if the premises licence holder is not the event organiser, which I understand in this case will be happening. So what you're going to do if the event is in full swing, before you realise that the band DJ sound system is a lot bigger, louder than expected, and how is it going to be consistently monitored, the impact of the entertainment on neighbours, particularly if it's going to be outside people that are coming in. Has been mentioned about affixing notices to the exits of the premises, asking people to leave quietly. Such notices can then be enforced by staff at the premises if noisy customers are in the process of leaving. That's what we understand is going to be happening. But noise may not be the only issue that occurs off-site as a result of an event on the premises. You need to consider other reasonable possibilities and how you manage them, e.g. littering, which has been mentioned by one of the residents, parking in local streets, which has also been raised, which could also occur. So it's not just obviously traffic leaving the site, it's where people might not just park on the actual event site. And what we have also mentioned is that the site does need to realise that even if a premises licence is granted, it does not preclude the council from taking any action for antisocial behaviour or stat nuisance if circumstances warrant it. So that's just something we do want to raise, that if we do get complaints, our stat nuisance and antisocial behaviour provisions are not governed by the licence. And I think that's all we want to mention at the moment. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Right, are there any other proper officers who wish to make any comments? Are there any questions of clarification that any of the members of the committee wish to ask? In that case, we'll move over to interested parties, which I think is Mr. Ryde. You need to unmute yourself, sir.
Yeah,
thank you.
Right, I didn't realise that the cinema wasn't included in the live music events. So the cinema sound will still be going on till after 11 o'clock at night, which obviously, because it's an outdoor event, that noise will still spread when that's being shown. I assumed incorrectly that the 15 events would include the cinema. So during the summer months, when you are enjoying your garden and outside, that there will be noise, possibly loud noise, for more than 15 times during the summer months, which could possibly mean every weekend there is an activity which is creating noise 2 doors away. Possibly over the whole weekend. So the only time you have time to spend with your family at home in the garden, you won't be able to enjoy because of the noise created from the events being carried out. Also, the noise where we've still got 2 children of school age, with events after 11 o'clock at night, like the cinema events, when you have got the windows open, the children need their sleep to recharge and ready for school and learning the next day. So I'm sorry, but I'm still concerned with the noise created after 11 o'clock at night. I say especially because it is literally only 2 doors away, and when you've got obviously a cinema isn't going to be a non-noise creating event, and you've got to have it loud enough to be able to spread it over 5 acres for people to listen in their vehicles. So if it's travelling across 5 acres, then it's going to be quite a loud noise 2 doors away. That's still my concern. I know this is slightly diverse, but yes, where the speed limit ends coming out of Findon is only 2 doors away. There are significant accidents what do happen on the A6 where people are turning into the caravan centre as it still stands at the minute, where people aren't hitting 30 at the speed limit and going to backs of vehicles outside our house. So I think the traffic management should also be considered because of where the entrance to the Fields is in the national speed limit area, not in a 30-mile-an-hour speed limit zone. Just to point that out to you. But my main concern is the lateness of the hours for the events, and especially the still serving alcohol till midnight, and people obviously not leaving at midnight. Thanks very much.
Thank you very much. Any of members got a question of clarification? I think, Frank, that is the members rather than yourself. Nothing? Okay. Yes, Frank.
Yeah, I just don't want to lose the point made by Mr. Ryde about the films, Chair. There's no speakers for the films. The sound is transmitted through car stereos and headphones. I just want to make that clear, because it's not a question of booming the sound out across 5 acres of field. I think that's something totally different to what Mr. Ryde envisages. I just wanted to make that clear.
Thank you very much. Mr. Ryde, would you like to come back on that matter?
Well, that's good that it's soundless on the cinemas, but still 15 events over the summer period, when it is the time you spend outside, that music or noise is going to be spread over 5 acres of land. So yeah, thank you. But thank you.
Yeah, I do understand your concern there, but I just, I'm sure you're pleased about the cinema. If that does go ahead, is not going to be a major problem. Thank you very much. Thank you. Right, then that takes us to any discussion that the members have with regard to this planning application. Doesn't appear that we have any particular comments that anybody wants to make. So therefore, Amanda, we move on then to us making the decision. Is that correct?
Unless anybody has any points of clarification or any summing up that they want to make.
I think Frank
I could just, I'm sorry.
Frank has got his hand up, so we'll let you go first.
I'm quite happy for Paul to go first, and then for me to follow Paul.
Okay, that's fair enough. Paul.
At
the site, yes, it is basically 5 acres, including the car park and that. But we're not, we don't envisage having a crowd from one wall to the other, not the maximum size. It's generally bands, etc., are in front of the old changing rooms. That's where they tend to be, because that's where the power is and it's easier. Well, the thing about generators, we've got mains power spread around the site, so we don't tend to use generators at all. And the band is generally paying to a crowd in front of that building, rather than trying to push the sound all the way to the furthest end, which is generally used for overspill parking, camping, etc. So yes, it's 5 acres, but you're condensing everybody into probably the first 50 meters. It's not it's not a vast, it's not the pyramid stage at Glastonbury. It's a smaller kind of almost village green type area.
And the sound is being boomed out to the open countryside rather than towards Finder.
It's aiming generally towards, well, I guess it would be sort of Crow Hill, Woodford way. We always have it set up that way because that is the natural way to do it. And we have a building in the way to help dead the sound a little, yes.
Yeah, okay. Thank you. Frank?
Yeah, I just wanted to sort of just clarify something that Mr. O'Donnell said. And I think this is important. Mr. O'Donnell made a point that we've heard what the application is intended to provide today, but things could change. I think they're Mr. O'Donnell's word. Things could change. Yes, things could change. I don't expect them to change, but there is always the safety net, not only for officers, but also for residents, that should there be any issues as a result of an operation of a premises licence, then it's always open to be challenged through the review process. So there is that safety net there. I just wanted to make that point, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you. Right. Yes, Councillor Harrington.
Yes, Chairman. I just wanted to be absolutely sure of what I heard, or I believe I heard. Is the applicant willing to accept an alcohol licence allowing him to serve alcohol till 11 o'clock rather than midnight, And is he willing to accept music only to be played till 11 o'clock rather than midnight or even 1:30? I think 1:30 was mentioned at one time, 1:30 in the morning. But is he willing to accept that music is played only until 11 o'clock? And is he willing to accept that alcohol will be served only up until 11 o'clock? Was I right in hearing that? Would you confirm that, please?
We have proposed a measure that any regulated music entertainment ceases at 11 o'clock. That has been discussed through dialogue with the Environmental Protection Service. The alcohol, at the moment, we're happy to pull back the alcohol hours on a Friday and Saturday to midnight. Sunday to Thursday remains at midnight, but if that, I wondered whether I could be given an opportunity just to call Paul to have a minute's discussion with him about that, to see if he would agree to reducing that to 11 o'clock, or whether there are specific reasons for keeping that until midnight. In the normal sort of hearing scenario, we'd be able to whisper to each other because we listen to each other.
I appreciate that. If you wish to do that, I'm more than happy that we do that. We need to get the right decision with the right acceptance.
Yes, I think 2 minutes, Chair. I might just disappear from your screen for 2 minutes.
Okay.
Okay, could I just say something before Frank calls me?
Yes, by all means.
Some events would be open to public. So it is possible some people from Findon could walk up, could have a drink, then they would be walking back down the A6 into Findon. Other events will be, say, by the Caravan Club or something like that, would be strictly the people on site. So if they come up, they have some music, they have a bar come in or whatever they do, then those people would be staying on site, camping overnight, not wandering off into town. So again, we're reducing the possible number of times that people might be walking back down the A6 from Findon. It's not every event will be open to public to walk up and then walk back down again later. So I just want to point out that it wouldn't be necessarily 15 times a year there'd be loads of people walking back down on a Saturday night or something. Half of that, or even if it is that many at all, would be staying on site and not leaving afterwards, because the whole idea is they book the site, they stay over, there's no drink driving, they've got somewhere to stay, get up and go tomorrow.
Thank you.
Okay,
do you still wish to make your call, Frank? Okay, we'll give you a couple of minutes to do that, please.
Thank you.
We'll just have a couple of minutes of I don't want to debate with yourself, Mr. Wild, just at the moment, right, while the other people are missing. So I'll come back to you in a few moments.
Yeah, that's fine.
It's the fun of technology, isn't it? That you can't whisper. If we can just wait a moment, because we've lost Andrew at the moment. Just wait for him to come back and then we'll start again.
Actually, you wouldn't hear their music, would you?
To ride you're at the moment. Okay, thank you. It's all right. We're just waiting for one of our councillors to come back and then we'll move on. Right, Andrew is back. Mr. Ryde, before we go to Frank, Mr. Ryde, you had a question?
Yeah, I'll say yes. You're saying the live music event finishes at 11, but there'll be people residing on the site who may want to play music after the event is finished as such. Will they be asked to keep the noise down or told, okay, you can have your stereos on till midnight, but after midnight, then because you're close to residential areas, you'll need to turn your music off? That was my question.
Yes, I thought it might be. Thank you. Frank, you're muted at the moment, sir.
I'll qualify Mr. Ryde's question first before moving on to the alcohol sales time. Anybody staying overnight, I think you heard Mr. Robinson say that campers tend to go on this part of the field furthest away from any residential property. So if they are playing a stereo, if they have got a radio or anything like that, then it would only be low level and it would not be audible at Mr. Ryde's property. I think that's the first point. In respect of, I think it was Councillor Harrington's question about the alcohol sales, Mr. Robinson would agree to an 11 o'clock finish for alcohol sales for persons that are not staying over. In other words, members of the public or people that are not staying and camping on the site, alcohol sales to finish at 11, but anybody staying overnight camping weekend, that they should be allowed to have alcohol up until midnight. It would be restricted to those persons only. That would of course beg a question, how do you differentiate between people that are staying and people that are not? You've heard me say in the original presentation that these events are organised through secretaries, through organised clubs, recognised clubs, etc., etc. The client will be made aware of the fact that alcohol for them will be available until midnight, and they will have to assist in identifying people that are not part of that group. I don't think that would be too difficult. For example, I can't imagine members of the public wanting to join a caravan AGM, for example. I suspect that the events would be solely for members of that organisation only. But it is something that would be managed by Mr. Robinson through liaison with the event organiser. Does that make sense to you?
Right. Yes, Mr. Ryde.
Sorry, I didn't mean to bring your hand down.
That's okay. That's all right. We're just checking. Right. Thank you. Have any officers or anybody else got any other further comments they want to make on this application before we actually break to make a decision, or any open discussion that members might wish to have? No.
Yep, I've got my hand up, Councillor.
Oh, sorry, you'd moved. That was the problem. Yes, Amanda.
Just a point of clarification from me. Obviously, we've talked about change to the terminal hour for music, entertainment and alcohol sales. Am I correct in thinking there's no proposed change to the opening hours for the events, just the terminal hours for alcohol sales and music entertainment?
I think sorry, Chair, I presume that you want me to take that question.
Please, yes, Frank.
The opening hours, the terminal hour for the opening hours was 30 minutes after the last permitted time for licensable activity. It's always a question, do opening hours actually form part of the Licensing Act? Because if there's no licensable activity taking place, then should there be opening hours? It's a debate which goes one way, or you can put an argument for it, you can put an argument against it. But if you are inclined to grant this license to the amended hours, then I would propose that the closing of the premises to the public would be 30 minutes after the final time for licensable activity. But of course, that wouldn't apply to anybody that was staying overnight on the premises, because they'd be there until the following morning.
Does that answer your question, Amanda? Okay. Well, I think that then brings us to the point where we break up and make our decision with the members and our legal representatives. Amanda, you've got your hand up again.
Back again, sorry. Now that we've finished, just to a point of clarification then on the process now. So obviously members will now obviously retire to make their decision. The decision won't be communicated today. We will write to you within 5 working days and you'll receive the decision at that point with all the relevant information. And I don't know whether Louise needed to add anything on the process as well. No? Okay, thank you.
Well, thank you for your attendance today, and we will make sure that that is applied with it. So if we can say goodbye to you folks, it gives us the chance to get back into discussion.
Thank you very much. Thank you for your time.
No,